Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection Podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour. This is episode 285 of the Canadiens Connection Podcast, and I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by the editor of the Hockey News Montreal, the founder and the president of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. And how are you doing today, Rick?
Good day, sir. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well. Time's flying, and it feels like not that long ago we were saying, oh, well, we got lots of time before the trade deadline.
And now this is our first podcast, of course, of the month of March, and that means that the trade deadline is just days away, and should be an exciting time for Montreal Canadiens fans. The market has started to move, and it's setting up. We'll talk about this in our second segment, but it's starting to set up quite nicely for Kent Hughes if he chooses to take advantage of it. So we've called this show Canadiens Connection, episode 285. The trade market's ripe for Canadiens moves.
So we'll take you through everything that's happened with the Montreal Canadiens since we've last met up. Of course, they've had a few games, some updates on their roster. We'll talk about their prospects. And at the very end, we have some trades to talk about from around the NHL. In segment 2, it's Kent Hughes' trade card. So we'll take a look at Kent Hughes' history as we approach the trade deadline, and we'll set up this upcoming trade deadline for everyone so that you know what to expect. And of course, in segment 3, it's the Have Your Say segment. Our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, who is untouchable on the Habs? We want to hear from you. And Rick, for those who are interested in answering that question or just sending in any of their comments, what's the best way for them to do so?
You're welcome to use our Rocket Sports text line. It's a simple number to remember, 5853-ROCKET, 5853-ROCKET. Text us 24 hours a day.
You can also reach out to us on social media. Just make sure that you are following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, we have a website, canadiensconnection.fm. Make sure that you check out our comprehensive pregame previews and postgame recaps for every Montreal Canadiens game at thn.com/Montreal. That's the Hockey News Montreal. And here's what's happened since we were gone. Going back to February the 24th, Montreal visits New Jersey, and they lose 4-3. Somehow, New Jersey came out of this game with no penalty minutes. But for Montreal, Suzuki scores twice. The New Jersey Devils really took advantage of their chances. A couple of bad giveaways by the Montreal Canadiens defense that led to the New Jersey Devils coming away with that victory.
Great game for Jake Allen, keeping the team close. Not a great game for Mike Matheson, as you mentioned. The turnovers, this was the Canadiens' 5th consecutive loss.
And a couple days later, Arizona comes to town, and Montreal breaks the losing streak, winning that one 4-2. Despite being outshot 38-21, Montreal managed to squeak ahead for the victory. Not Connor Ingram's best performance in net for the Arizona Coyotes, but Montreal did a good job taking advantage there.
This was a good game for, I thought, Jordan Harris. Brilliant pass to Tanner Pearson for his goal, blocked, made a shot block and carried the puck, got his goal, and then a brilliant pass. Mike Matheson again, tagged for 4 giveaways, leading the team on that, was a -2. But this was an ugly game, I think. An ugly game between two struggling teams. The Canadiens coming in with a 5-game losing streak. The Arizona Coyotes coming in with a 12-game losing streak, and that one was pushed. The other player I thought that struggled here was Juraj Slafkovsky. Took 2 high-sticking penalties. And he also extended his scoreless streak to 4 games. He had a -3 in that section, and caused some, I think, some introspection from Juraj Slafkovsky, who said he just can't take those penalties. It's not only the taking of bad penalties, one hand on the stick, getting it, in the face of the opposition players, but he's constantly arguing with the officials about those bad penalties, about the penalties he's taking, and the referees sometimes have tolerance for the veterans who argue calls, but less so for the young players. And I think he's just got to watch himself in addition to paying attention to keeping his hands on the stick.
Yeah, absolutely there. They had another game a couple days later on February the 29th. They visit the Florida Panthers, and they're back in the losing column, losing 4-3 in the shootout. So once again, the Montreal Canadiens outshot by a pretty wide margin, but once again taking advantage of some shaky goaltending from the Florida Panthers. They did manage to hang on all the way until the shootout, but Anton Lundell with a great move in the shootout to put this one in the bag for the Florida Panthers.
You mentioned shaking goaltending. I didn't think the goaltenders on either side were very good. Sam Montembeault, his second straight start, got kind of a soft start tossed to him going up against Arizona. And then this was obviously a tougher start against Florida. I thought the Canadiens played reasonably well. At least they stayed in it, in part due to two incredible plays that kind of caught Florida off guard in both instances. And one of them was Arber Xhekaj's rink-long pass to Suzuki for a great goal. And then that set play at the end of the second period, 0.7 seconds left. Juraj Slafkovsky, great shot. Suzuki winning the faceoff there. For Montembeault, 2 out of the 3 goals I thought were pretty soft, and then he gave up 2 of the 3 shots in the shootout. Other thing I'll just mention here that wasn't pretty was the Canadiens giving up another shorthanded goal. They lead the league in that dubious category, having given up 10 goals well on the power play. So not only is the power play struggling, but and not scoring, they're giving up goals well on the man advantage.
Oof. So the Canadiens' record after this week is 23, 28, and 9. That's 55 points, 26th in the NHL. And Rick, don't look now, but I'm seeing the Habs have 0.0% chance of making the playoffs, on pace for 75 points.
Yeah, I think we've all figured that out, that playoffs aren't coming this year. One of the things that was interesting was that Marty St. Louis was asking if he thought there was progress from year to year. If you look at prior to Thursday's game, which would be 59 games, both last year and this season, the Canadiens had 54 points. 54 points in on February 27th, 2023. 54 points on February 28th, 2024. 458 winning percentage, identical. This season. The only thing that's a little different, well, there's 2 things. The Canadiens had more regulation wins last season, 16 at this point in the season, 14 right now. And their goal differential was a little higher, 7 goals higher. They were minus 51 at this point last season, minus 44, which still isn't anything to write home about. This season. So I understand we've had these questions come to us. Where's the progress? Where's the year to year kind of advancement? And hard pressed to make that case. And the difficulty is that the Canadiens, their remaining schedule, just 22 games left. They have the toughest, according to our good friends at Tankathon, who put out stats about strength of schedule. The Canadiens have the toughest schedule remaining, that their opponents have a .598 winning percentage, and that's the most. So, what's going to happen over the next 22 games? Are they going to be able to match their point total or surpass their point total? And is it going to be affected by the trade deadline? Those are all things that we'll have to watch and certainly talk about.
For sure. And I'll point out, too, lots of 10 p.m. starts coming up within this month of March. So, yeah, they're going to have... so I'm assuming they'll be on the road out west, which is always a difficult thing for teams.
This is a difficult thing for teams and difficult thing for us, yes.
Yeah, absolutely, that too. And, of course, I think Montreal certainly benefiting from some loser points this season. Otherwise, I think they'd be much further down the standings, right?
That's a really good point, that those extra points that they've gotten in overtime or shootout have been in overtime. Have helped them.
So make sure that you check out Habs Notepad, Habs headlines, feature articles, and game day posts appearing regularly at thn.com/Montreal. That's the Hockey News Montreal. Taking a look at our roster news, it appears that one Rafael Harvey-Pinard has participated in Canadiens practice in Tampa Bay on Friday morning, so that's showing some progress. Do we have any further updates on one RHP?
Just that he was wearing, it wasn't a typical practice on Friday. It was more of a skills practice with drills. And actually there was a fascinating shooting practice with Cole Caulfield. We saw some video of him with a net in front of a net. Anyway, you had to see it. Point is that it wasn't a typical practice, and Harvey-Pinard has not been cleared by the team doctors for contact, so he's not going to be playing in Tampa. But I think it's good news that he's close.
Jaden Struble, who's been out with an injury for a little while, he's back at practice as well and traveling with the team to Tampa Bay. Last month, for the month of February, one Nick Suzuki was named the Molson Cup winner. So that's usually calculated by the amount of star selections that they've received in the month. Suzuki was first star in games twice, on February 6th and 13th. He was second star of the game on 3 occasions, on the 10th, 17th, and the 29th in Florida. So, I think this is well-deserved. Suzuki's been on fire. He's certainly elevated his game, and one player that's really shown his progression.
The 3-star selection, there used to be some method to it. There used to be some honor to it. Right now it's trash. It's garbage. It's on around the league and in Montreal, it's garbage. However, they got it right. It just so happened that Suzuki had such a great month that it all worked out. And yes, he's deserves the Molson Cup. For February, 11 goals, that's second highest in the NHL. And you wonder, the Canadiens' power play is below 20%, 19%, thereabouts. You wonder if it was up around that 25% mark, if he'd be the recipient of some extra points. I think he's been very good. He's almost to that point a game mark that you kind of set. He's just outside the top 10 in terms of points and goals for centers in the league. I think he's really made a concerted. Now, if you look at his numbers, his defensive stats have fallen a little bit as his offense has come out. That's something he needs to work on. But I think he's headed in the right direction, and full kudos to him for his spectacular month of February.
So, Rick, how do you feel about doing something we've not done in a while? I think this is a good week to do it.
Sure, why not?
Let's get to bad tweets of the week.
Listen up. It's time for some bad tweets. on the Canadiens Connection.
So it's been a while since we've done this. And this time there are actually two tweets that are kind of connected. And it's crazy. I have no idea where this started, but the first one comes from one Ryan Whitney of Spittin' Chicklets. His tweet says, "The Sens have something cooking right now. Rumor boys hearing that Ottawa would maybe move Brady Tkachuk. Can't believe it, though, because no one could be that dumb. 9 points out of the playoffs with 2 games in hand." So that's an interesting thing just to randomly throw out there. And I will note, too, that I think it was maybe a day or two after that Sens GM Steve Staios went out on a podcast and said, nope, Brady Tkachuk's not going anywhere.
It's nuts. And I asked you, when we were in the pre-show, how many players are there in the National Hockey League like Brady Tkachuk? And you replied,
there are 2, and they both have the last name Tkachuk.
Exactly. So, this is garbage when Ryan Whitney himself makes a statement about there's a rumor out there and then discredits it all in the same tweet, saying, well, they couldn't be that dumb. This is silly. Why would they? Why? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And yeah, this is worthy of our bad tweet of the week. But we didn't just have one.
Nope, it gets worse. BPM Sports decided to take this and run away with it. They tweeted out, and I'll translate this to English. They put out a poll on Twitter that says, "Exchange proposal. Montreal receives Brady Tkachuk. Ottawa receives Cole Caulfield, Arber Xhekaj, and Winnipeg's top pick. Who says no?" And surprisingly, the vote is 61.4% of people said the Canadiens would say no, just to make it even more wild, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, BPM Sports, normally like a reasonable publication, they tend to do a good job sticking with the news. But this, I don't know who decided to put this out there. And this is probably the worst trade proposal I've seen in exchange for Brady Tkachuk. Like, seriously. And not to mention that people thought that the Canadiens would be the ones saying no.
Yeah, and listen, I guess that's because it includes fan favorite players. Cole Caulfield's a fan favorite, of course. Arber Xhekaj is a fan favorite, of course. But this isn't enough for and Winnipeg's first round, the first round pick that the Canadiens got from Winnipeg. This isn't near enough for a Brady Tkachuk. And fans are saying, no, don't go for it. Of course, if this was laid at the feet of Kent Hughes, it wouldn't take him more than a second. But of course not. It's silly. And one bad tweet led to a ridiculous tweet, I guess, is how this week went. I'm quite astonished by what we have here.
Yeah, it's just bizarre what transpired here. But how about we get to some more credible type stuff here? I think it's a good time for the Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
Each week we highlight a Montreal Canadiens prospect, and this week we're going to shine the spotlight on Brantford Bulldogs forward Florian Xhekaj. He was selected in last year's draft, and also the brother of one Arber Xhekaj, who I know is a very popular Montreal Canadiens player right now. He's had a pretty good season, certainly taking a step forward, and right now his point total 53 points in 55 games. Not bad. In the past 10 games, he's actually put up 16 points. So he's certainly stepping up, and he's looking basically like what you would expect from a Xhekaj who plays forward, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you said almost on a point-a-game pace, 53 points in 55 games. Also, in those 55 games, 66 penalty minutes. Better than a penalty minute per game. But for the last 10 games, and that goes back to February the 9th, he's on quite a 10-game point streak with 16 points. Let's make that 11 games. 16 points. Yeah, no, that's 10 games. 16 points in 10 games, 11 goals, and 5 assists. He's been tremendous for Brantford.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd certainly recommend, if you haven't already, you might want to tune into a Brantford game just to watch this kid, because he's a pretty exciting player, and I'm sure he'll be a fan favorite once he arrives in Montreal.
Loads of fun to watch.
Let's take a look at a couple of defensemen that are not quite yet with the Montreal Canadiens. And the big question here as we approach the end of the season is, when will David Reinbacher and Lane Hutson be joining the organization? So I see for David Reinbacher playing in the NL, the NL season should be coming to a close at the end of March. I know that his team Cloton is definitely not a playoff team. They've not had a great season, but of course the way they do tournaments and whatnot in the NL is a little bit different. For one Lane Hutson, the NCAA, of course, should be coming to an end towards the end of March as well. But I believe Lane Hutson's team's been doing pretty good. Do you think that they would get into that Frozen Four?
Yeah, I think that they'll be in the lead up to that. The Terriers, they've been on an amazing pace. And we'll be in the regional finals, we expect. And if they manage to qualify for the Frozen Four, now they were in it last year, then that ties up Lane Hutson for a bit. Frozen Four this year takes place in Minneapolis between April 11th and 13th. So he could then, after that, sign his ELC and join the Canadiens for their the Canadiens end the season back-to-back games against the Detroit Red Wings. He could get into 2 games, and essentially it's kind of an enticement to bring prospects is to let them play a couple games at the end of the season, and they burn 1 year of their contract that way. What about the Laval Rocket? Well, given all the complications, Lane Hutson isn't really eligible to play in Laval unless he signs a PTO with the Laval Rocket, and I just don't see that happening. But so he's most likely to finish the season with the Canadiens, and I'd love to see Marty go to an 11-7 kind of format, play with 7 defensemen. That way you could put Lane Hutson in there, certainly for power play, take some of Mike Matheson's minutes, certainly on the power play, and that way you could rotate him in and give him some exposure. Without exposing him too much. David Reinbacher, the NL is complicated. Cloton is one of the 2 teams at the bottom. Those teams will have a playoff. Cloton's regular season actually ends on Monday, but then what follows is like a play out, I think they call it. That the loser of that series then becomes subject to like a relegation tournament, and then the relegation plays against I think they call it the SL, which is their AHL. So the winner of the AHL plays the loser, the worst team in the NL, and then they can swap for the following. It's complicated. So there's lots of balls in the air there. So David Reinbacher could join the Canadiens organization midway through March, or more likely end of March. I think David Reinbacher is likely to play with Laval, and then he can. Well, we're going to check with with Patrick Williams about, because there's really weird regulations about who's eligible for the playoffs or not. Typically, if you're joining the team after the trade deadline, you're not eligible for the playoffs. But there's been loopholes, workarounds in the past. But anyway, he would be able to play with Laval for their end of their season. So, what do we know? We know that it's complicated. We know that it's not decided. We know that we'll see both players over the next month or so.
So with that, how about we take a look at the Laval Rocket from this past week? Kind of up and down for them. I think you go back to February the 24th, the Toronto Marlies come to town. Toronto wins 5-1. Not a very good game for Laval, oddly enough. Nothing went well for them. Maillet scored the lone Laval goal shorthanded, but of course the Marlies scored 5 in that game, and Laval just in general kind of looked outclassed. A couple of days later, they did have a nice bounce back on February the 28th. Laval did get a 4-0 victory. This is the first pro shutout for one Jakub Dobis, and of course Laval with 4 different goal scorers, so a near perfect game in that one. The next game came on March the 1st, and this one was certainly a nail-biter as Laval takes on Hartford, and they lose 2-1. Laval came up just short despite outshooting their opponents 33-24. Overall, this game could have gone either way.
For sure, and I thought Dobis was terrific. I know he got a shutout against Bridgeport. Bridgeport, a little bit of a weaker team in the AHL. But I thought, even though he took the loss against Hartford, he was unbelievable in this game. And Adam Sikora was having a very good game for Hartford. The Slovak prospect taken by the Rangers, second round, 2022. And that and other saves. Dobis was very, very good. He's been terrific. Kaskasuo going to be out for a bit. You can find out more about that on the Rocket Hockey Report. But Dobis has taken the ball and he's been very, very good.
Laval's record currently 23-22, 5-2. That's 53 points and 24th in the AHL. They have 3 games coming up in the next week. Laval's going to visit Springfield, and they go back home to take on Syracuse on March the 6th. And on March the 8th, Cleveland comes to town. So lots of exciting games coming up for the Laval Rocket.
Mm-hmm.
Going down one more level to the ECHL, Montreal's ECHL affiliate is the Trois-Rivières Lions. A very quiet week, just the one game going back to February the 24th as they take on Newfoundland and lose 4-3. Strauss-Mann recently was loaned to the Trois-Rivières Lions. He actually had a couple of good starts before being called back up with the injury to Kaskasuo. Alexander Voyer, I think, had a very good game and was kind of a standout in this game against the Newfoundland Growlers. So the Trois-Rivières has a record of 20-24, 3-3. That's 12th place in the Eastern Conference. Looking at the QMJHL, we started covering that for the Hockey News. On there, we've been putting out some articles, and this is the Memorial Cup Contenders Series being written by one Mike Raschel. The most recent one is about the Oshawa Generals. So for those that like to follow the Q, we've been doing our best to provide information on all the possible Memorial Cup contenders from around the CHL.
Memorial Cup is fun to watch, and I know that many of our listeners pay attention to the Q. If you want a bit of a heads up as far as who the Q representative might face, this is a great series to learn more about the top teams in the OHL coming up. We'll also have the top teams in the WHL. Mike's done a great job for us.
Absolutely. So if you want to find out all our content about the Canadiens prospects, you can head over to thn.com/Montreal. And if you're looking for the best English language coverage of the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League, head over to thn.com/QMJHL. And now it's time for our quote of the week. And as you said in the pre-show, this might even be quote of the year. I'm not going to do a whole lot to set this up. You'll just have to listen to what Marty St. Louis has to say. And Marty, what don't we get right?
I mean, listen, there's a lot of stuff that was said about, Cole early in the year. I don't think you were getting it right, that's for sure. Slav at times too, but I feel it's, it doesn't matter. You guys are here to do a job, and and for me, I respect the work that you guys do, but for me, I think it's important, especially in this market, to understand what's being told, what's being said about certain guys, so that I can, because I can't control if they're going to read that. I can only control with the knowledge that I have, the information that I have, how I can help navigate what he's going through at the time. So for me, information is powerful. So I can't just avoid that. It's part of my job, and sometimes you guys are not wrong, and sometimes you're wrong, but sometimes you're not wrong. And for me, I have my own truth with my player, but I think it's good to understand what's out there on the player so I can help him navigate that. Based on some of the things you see, sometimes you guys are not wrong, but it's your truth, and for me, I love starting with the truth, but again, it's my truth. It's, and it's not necessarily the truth, but it's okay. You guys have your own truth, and I have my own truth. And at the end of the day, to help the player, we got to find the truth.
All right. A lot to take in there. A little bit longer of a clip than we usually play, but we wanted to give you the full context of what Marty said. And where's this all coming from? He was simply asked, what did the media get wrong? Turns out, Marty St. Louis, unlike any other head coach in the National Hockey League that I'm aware of, pays attention to what's said about his players in the media. He reads, he listens, he watches the coverage, which is odd. It's odd that he would have time to do that. And maybe he has some of the communications people doing some of that for him. But he seemed to say that he feels it's part of his job to monitor what's being said about his players. The only other person who's ever said that I recall was Marc Bergevin, who said early on in his and listen, Marc Bergevin didn't have any experience as a general manager. He had a brief 16 months maybe in hockey operations for Chicago, but not as a general manager. And when he came in, he listened to the afternoon radio call-in shows in Montreal about the Canadiens, and he said he and Jeff Molson listened to them, and they would talk about them, and sometimes Jeff Molson would get mad and phone in and yell at the director of the radio station and say, "No, you better get better." And anyway, that's a side point. This is really strange. Let me just take a detour here for a minute and focus on something he said. He talked about my truth is not your truth, and my truth and your truth may be different from the truth. All of that to me is word salad and it just throws out the window the meaning of the word truth. Michael, you can have an opinion. I can have an opinion, but there is only one truth. That's the meaning of the word truth is there is one truth. So all this baloney about your truth, my truth, I know that's kind of become into the anyway. That's a side point. But the fact that Marty St. Louis feels that it's his job and that he has the time to read and listen and watch what the media is covering and what they're saying about his players. Could it be this is just a question. Could it be a bit of a vanity project? Could he be interested in what they're saying about him, given that he has no experience? Anyway, that's just a question. But he says he is doing that because he's worried that his players are reading stories. They're on social media, and he can't control that. He can't tell them not to do that. And so if they're taking in information and that's affecting them somehow, he can then understand what's being said and help them navigate that. We've said directly to players. I get that young people, teenagers have, they're on social media in this day and age. But once you get to the National Hockey, once you get to the AHL, get off. It's simple. Don't pay attention to what fans say, or don't even go to La Presse or and I'm not picking on them. Whatever sports, don't read about what people are saying. Just stay off. Anyways, in this market, Marty wants to know what's being said, and his reasoning is that so he can help the player navigate it.
Well, just in case, hi Marty, hope you're having a good day. Big fan here. But yeah, no, I agree with everything that you've said there. And something I wanted to just mention briefly is Marty, as a coach, he could encourage players to not do all the things that you just said. He could encourage his players not to look and not to worry about it. I think that might even be the coach's job to help his players stay away from social media and whatnot, right?
Yes. And I mean, the communication staff, the coaching staff, encourage them to that. How about listening to me rather than listening to the noise out there?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think it's fair to say too that what gets said in the media, what gets said amongst fans, it's going to be way different than what you hear when you're actually in the dressing room and what gets said in the boardroom. I mean, there are some things that, with all respect, get said on either podcasts or radios where if you were to say that in, the boardroom with Jeff Molson and Kent Hughes, you might actually get kicked out because it's so ridiculous, right?
Well, absolutely. And you have to understand that, particularly the Montreal media, they have an agenda. They're not necessarily reporting news. They're trying to drive the agenda. We know that's the biggest problem with the Montreal media is whether it's about language, whether it's about whatever it's about, they're trying to drive a particular message out there. That typically doesn't have anything to do with winning. What they should be talking about in the locker room with the coach, with the players, is about how do we win? How we're not worried about responding to other people's agendas about whether a player should be acquired, a player should stay because he speaks the right language, whatever it is, has the right birthplace. They should be talking about what we do to win, and that should be the focus, not let all this noise in and talk about it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I think, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that before we get to our hockey news?
Yeah, I just, not being critical of Marty, but because he's doing things differently. He doesn't have, call it whatever you will, whether you see his background as a lack of experience or a lack of baggage. He's clearly a player-friendly coach, and he's trying to advocate for his players. And you heard him when he said, you were saying things about Caulfield and you were saying things about Slafkovsky at the beginning of the year that weren't right. Well, I think what most people were saying is neither of them was playing very good. And that is the truth, not my truth, not anybody else's truth. It was the truth at the start of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, we'll get to our hockey news and notes before we take our first break here. Starting things off, the Vancouver Canucks made big news just on Saturday morning, March the 2nd, as they re-signed Elias Pettersson to an 8-year contract worth $92.8 million. He's an over point per game player throughout his career. I think both sides are going to be very happy to get this done. Seemed like Pettersson was avoiding contract negotiations during the season, but not too long ago, there were some reports about a possible trade to the Carolina Hurricanes. That didn't go through, and it seemed like pretty quickly Pettersson was willing to talk and showed that he wanted to stay in Vancouver. So both sides are going to be very happy here.
I think so. Vancouver's a good team. He's a tremendous player. He's going to be top 5 with at 11.6 million AAV. So this all makes sense, and it kind of shuts up the naysayers who say, Vancouver doesn't want to sign their players or whatever. I think this is good all around.
3 trades went down, all involving defensemen. The first one is the Dallas Stars acquired Chris Tanev from the Calgary Flames. It was a 3-team trade. They had the New Jersey's Devils hop on board. They took a 4th-round pick in exchange for retaining 50% of Tanev's salary. What the Flames get, they get a 2nd-round pick, a conditional 3rd-round pick, and Artem Grushnikov, a defensive prospect who seems to, it sounds like he's a pretty similar player to Chris Tanev, but much younger. Maybe not a top 10 prospect on the Calgary Flames, but it seems like they were quite happy with that return. Yeah,
Calgary, it was a prospect that they valued, that they targeted. I think there's a fair bit of criticism here that they didn't get a 1st-round pick. But they got a lot. They got a pretty good haul, and from what we've heard, on the table from one of the other teams was a 1st-round pick, but that team wanted Calgary to take back a bad contract, and rather than take a 1st-round pick and a bad contract, they took a prospect that they coveted and some 2nd-round picks. So I think well done Calgary on this.
The Toronto Maple Leafs reacquire Ilya Lyubushkin. I think it was, 2 seasons ago, they made a trade for Lyubushkin from the Arizona Coyotes. Lyubushkin left as a free agent, and now they decided they wanted him back. So the Anaheim Ducks, in exchange for Lyubushkin, take on a 3rd-round pick. The Carolina Hurricanes hopped on this trade. They take a 6th-round pick in exchange for retaining 50% of the salary as well. So I think Toronto, this helps a bit. I don't know how much it moves the needle. Lyubushkin is much better away from the puck than with the puck, but I think this does start to fix some of their holes on defense.
Yeah, I think so too. But clearly Toronto's not finished. They need some help up front, but I think they may not even be finished with respect to rebuilding their defense core. I don't think he's necessarily the answer there. Interesting, though, that in this week of 3 significant trades, semi-significant trades, 2 of them were 3-team deals, which is that a signal of what's to come as we approach the trade deadline?
Yeah. The final trade here, the New Jersey Devils acquired defenseman Curtis McDermott from the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for a 7th-round pick and Bardakov, who's a forward prospect. The Colorado Avalanche, of course, I think they're just trying to free up some space, whereas the New Jersey Devils, not a huge get in Curtis McDermott, but certainly someone that will help fill in the void for them. Yeah, a little bit of a depth for the Devils. And as you said, Calgary wants to be busy. They're freeing up some space, so helps both teams. The market is in motion, at least the defensive market, and we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes. Yep. So I think right now it's a good time to get to our first break. We'll hear a message from our sponsors, DraftKings, and then we'll get to our big topic segment, Kent Hughes' trade card. This is Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Maybe you want to make a bet on 5 different players who are going to score a goal tonight. The opportunities are endless on DraftKings Sportsbook. There are so many different combinations, opportunities, specials, parlays, straight up money line bets, you name it. There's so many ways to play on DraftKings Sportsbook. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with the code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella. You can find me on Twitter at the Spinella. With me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You can follow him on Twitter at Rocket Sports, and you can also follow this podcast at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, you can check out our website, canadiensconnection.fm. And just a little reminder here to make sure that you hit that subscribe button for the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on your favorite podcasting app. That way you don't miss a single episode. And the trade deadline, not too far away. Can Kent Hughes' past performances at the trade deadline provide any insight into his potential moves this upcoming week? And how has the market changed with the trades that have been completed this week? We saw 3 defensemen move. We talked about that in the first segment. And to be honest, looking at Kent Hughes' history in terms of trades, it seems like he might be a bit of a creature of habit. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, if you're looking at future behavior, best way to predict it is to look at past behavior. And now, that's not to say that he has an extensive record when it comes to the trade deadline. And you know, part of it is going to be circumstantial, coming into the circumstances where you're in a rebuild and you have to start. I think Kent Hughes' first task was to create some cap flexibility for himself. So he kind of attended to that right away. So is he going to be making the same number of major moves? Not so much. But I think it's worth taking a look at what he's done, partly as, you know, because it's easy to forget the job that he had to do and what he's done so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, let's turn back the clock. I want to take a look at Kent Hughes' very first trade deadline and all the acquisitions he made, and probably a very busy one for him too. I'd say that this was quite successful. The very first move that Kent Hughes made as a general manager was, at the time, if you remember, Montreal was desperate for just anyone in goal because they had so many injury problems, and that was a trade to the Minnesota Wild. Brendan Baddock in exchange for Andrew Hammond. It's hard to believe that he actually made some starts for the Montreal Canadiens, but Hammond was later moved out. to the New Jersey Devils in exchange for Nate Schnarr. I guess that was about a month later that went down. So, of course, Kent Hughes filled in a need for just a little while he needed that warm body in net, and certainly filled that pretty well. The first major trade he made would have been the Tyler Toffoli trade, and this went down on a Valentine's Day, bright and early before the trade deadline. In exchange for Tyler Toffoli, he picked up one Tyler Pitlick, Emil Heineman, and a first-round pick from the Calgary Flames. I think we can all agree that this was a very nice return for Kent Hughes, and I think we all think that ended up being a great trade. A couple days later, Kent Hughes with a very minor trade to help out Laval, free up some space. It was one Michael McNiven. Remember Michael McNiven? He got traded to the Calgary Flames in exchange for future considerations. So not a huge trade, but of course Kent Hughes building a little relationship with the Calgary Flames. Closer to the trade deadline, of course, Ben Sherratt was moved to the Florida Panthers in exchange for Ty Smilanic and a couple of picks. They received a 4th round pick and a 1st round pick. The big one coming up very close to that trade deadline was Arturi Lehkonen to the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for Justin Barron and a 2nd round pick. So this first trade deadline that Kent Hughes handled, I thought he fared very well, and it actually gave us a pretty good impression of what kind of general manager he was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said before, he was clearly he was moving some veterans. Tyler Toffoli was well liked and a contributing member, and it was difficult to see Tyler Toffoli go. But as far as the haul that came back, you think of Heineman, you think of Philippe Machard, you think of Volokin even, with Canadiens made that selection in the 5th round for him. You mentioned about the goaltenders coming in and out. Michael McNiven going out. There was a case of Kent Hughes doing right by a player. Remember, Michael McNiven didn't really have a place to play, and he was off in some other organization's ECHL team. He complained about it, and understandably so, and so he was moved. Not because he was complaining, but I think because Kent Hughes, the agent in him, thought it was the right thing to do. And then, as you mentioned, the Ben Sherratt trade, the Arturi Lehkonen trade, and with some of these trades, like Arturi Lehkonen, Justin Barron came back the other way. But also a 2nd round pick in 2024. So that trade is still paying dividends to Kent Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens. But for the most part, bringing in really good assets, as well as creating some flexibility on the salary cap. And I would give, and I think I did at the time, gave him a top rating, an A rating for his 2022 trade deadline. And when we talk about the trade deadlines in each of these cases, it isn't the day, what he did on the day, but it's the month or thereabouts leading up to the trade deadline. We're considering trade deadline trades.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in that one, he got to work pretty early. The Tyler Toffoli trade happened over a month before the trade deadline. So I think good work by Kent Hughes on that one. 2023, on the other hand, I don't think we were huge fans of Kent Hughes' work. He made 3 moves, the first one coming on February 26, 2023. And that was trading Evgeny Dadonov to the Dallas Stars in exchange for one Denis Gurianov. Gurianov proceeded to leave as a UFA, so not a big fan of that one. I know Gurianov came in to Montreal. He scored a few goals, made things look exciting, but they didn't end up with really any asset out of that at the end of the day. On March the 3rd that year, another very minor trade, trading Nate Schnarr to the Los Angeles Kings in exchange for defenseman Frederick Allard, who would join the Laval Rocket. And of course, pretty quiet trade deadline day as Montreal comes in to be a third-party broker to help facilitate a trade for Nick Bonino to the Pittsburgh Penguins. This was a three-way trade that involved the San Jose Sharks as well. So what were your thoughts on his work in that trade deadline?
Well, this was an issue of Kent Hughes. I think he has admitted that they completely misjudged. And I'm not making this up. He said it about a week or so ago that they completely misjudged what the players that would come onto the market, which would affect their ability to trade. They also misjudged the fact that waiting too long means that your players can get injured. Sean Monahan was injured. The real difficult one here is Joel Edmondson. He was later traded in the summer for not the kind of return that he would have got had he been traded when healthy leading up to the trade deadline. And we were, it started around Christmas time that we were trade Joel Edmondson. Please. And not to say that he has to listen to us, but I think Kent Hughes is learning. Kent Hughes is learning how to read the market. He's learning how to talk to other GMs in terms of what their plans are and what players they're going to make available, and realizing that while he did spectacularly well waiting till 15 minutes before the trade deadline to trade Arturi Lehkonen, that wasn't necessarily something he could do in every case. Worked out really well in 2022. Being patient, overly patient, didn't work at all in 2023. So I think there was a lesson there. The other thing I think he learned is he dipped his toe into the third party trade aspect of being a broker. Like I don't know that the Canadiens, they ended up with a 5th round pick in this upcoming draft, 2024, for their trouble of taking on all that salary. Was that worth it? And part of that is because that's all that was available to him, given the fact that he had so many injuries at last year's trade deadline.
For sure. So looking at this current trade deadline in 2024, one move did go down on the 2nd of February, and that was the Sean Monahan trade to the Winnipeg Jets in exchange for a 1st-round pick and a conditional 3rd-round pick. The condition being that Montreal receives a 2027 3rd-round pick if the Winnipeg Jets win the 2024 Stanley Cup. So Kent Hughes did a great job getting that first-round pick in exchange for Sean Monahan. I think that's a great start to the trade deadline, but of course there's, I think, a few more trades that you and I would like to see.
Yeah, we were full of praise for him starting early, making that move, and he acted quickly once the market started to change, and there was those players that started to be scooped up in a bit. I mean, he jumped in perfectly. The market unfolded for him perfectly, and he jumped in at the perfect time to be aggressive, to trade Sean Monahan, so that the Jets, were kind of, even though they missed out on the other trade, they were able to get in on this. He acted perfectly. Now he has to continue. He has to continue to do that.
So with about a week before that trade deadline goes down, let's take a look at the trade boards. Looking first at TSN, still Jake Allen sitting at number 13. And Well, one David Savard is appearing at number 49 out of 50 on TSN's trade board, which I'm not opposed to seeing. Looking at the Athletic from Chris Johnston, the only Montreal Canadian appearing there is at number 21, and that is also Jake Allen. The top 5 remaining on Chris Johnston's trade board after this week. Number 1 for the Flames, it's defenseman Noah Hanifin. Although I believe the Flames have expressed some interest in trying to re-sign Hanifin, but I don't really know what the Flames are doing right now. That could be something that they just floated out to the media. Number 2, Pittsburgh Penguins forward Jake Gensel on an expiring contract. He's currently injured, but he was seen practicing today. And third, it's Adam Henrique, of course, forward, pretty good center, a little bit underrated. Number 4 is the Flyers defenseman Sean Walker. I believe that's a right shot defenseman, so we know that those are pretty coveted around the league. And in at number 5, one Jacob Markstrom. It's been a whole lot of a mess, and we'll get to that briefly.
Yeah. So as far as the defensemen who are off the board, Tanev was expected to be the first domino. That's done. Lyubushkin right there. So the market is in motion, particularly with respect to right defense, as you said correctly, in demand. And the other piece, I guess, I think Dallas is off the board in terms of their need, their defensive need, because we got to look at both sides, the players that are available and the teams that are interested in pursuing and filling a need. So where does that leave a David Savard? Who else? You mentioned Sean Walker is might be available. Maybe a Matt Dunba. I think, and that relates to the question of should the Canadiens get involved, because what's the return going to be? As I said, I think that the return for Tanev was actually pretty good. Yeah. It was a deal that Calgary chose. We should also note that Tanev is a rental, UFA at the end of the year, which is different for a David Savard, who has one more year on his deal, and that should raise his value for a team. The other thing that would raise his value, and we're talking about salary retention, we expect, as we said in our show last week, we'd expect that any of the deals that Kent Hughes will get involved in would require salary retention. That we expect that if a team was to trade for a David Savard, that salary retention would be for this year and for next year. So that also raises his value. So I think, in my opinion, this defensive market, much like what happened with Monahan, the defensive market has unfolded perfectly for Kent Hughes. You had Tanev, who's a rugged blue liner. You have if that's what at right shot defenseman, if that's what a team is looking for, your consolation prize is David Savard. Your consolation prize is David Savard. He's a shot blocker, and who would be interested in a David Savard? Why wouldn't Tampa Bay be interested in a David Savard? Why wouldn't they?
Reacquiring him.
Yeah, very familiar with him. Sergachev's out for the season with his injury, unfortunate injury. That was an awful injury. Now there's the whole left shot, right shot. Maybe they're not desperate for a right shot defenseman, but why wouldn't they be involved? Boston, Vancouver, maybe. And as I said, I'm not convinced that Toronto is done with respect to their defense. So I think this is pretty positive in terms of the market for Kent Hughes. The argument back is, well, you need David Savard because he's a mentor to the young defenseman. And full credit, yes, and Arber Xhekaj spoken about him. Caden Gooley's spoken about the value of him. However, I would say that those young defensemen, certainly the ones in the organization now, have probably learned all they're going to learn from David Savard. Caden Gooley's going into his third season next year. He's been a leader everywhere he's been. And Kent Hughes says we're turning over the team to the young players. Well, Sean Monahan was moved with the intention of turning over a bigger leadership role to Nick Suzuki and eventually to Kirby Dach when he's back next season. Why wouldn't you do the same thing with your defensive core? Now, I understand, and we've talked before about the fact that Kent Hughes is going to leverage the media. He doesn't want to appear desperate, so he's put out there, and Pierre LeBrun has said, it's going to take a lot. The Canadiens really don't want to let David Savard go, so it's going to take a lot. I think that's just Kent Hughes using the media to get the message out of just how valuable David Savard is to raise his, to raise the level of the proposals. I would be really shocked. Not shocked. I would be surprised though if David Savard is not moved by Friday.
Yeah, I think to your point as well, if you can get a third-round pick for Ilya Lyubushkin, I think you can get something pretty good for David Savard, if not better. The other thing I would say is that I do think Savard is playing some of the best hockey that he has since joining Montreal. So I would think that his value is probably at an all-time high, and I think it just makes sense that it would be the right time to move along. Do you agree with that? I
agree completely. He's playing really well, so his value is high. He has a year left. He's not a UFA, and he's healthy right now. Remember, he did have the hand injury earlier. What can happen next if the Canadiens hold on to him and try to trade him next season? Well, his value is going to be down because he's going to be a rental at that point. He's going to be a year older. Maybe there won't be as much of a demand for right defensemen as there is right now, with a number of teams looking for one and with a couple of those defensemen off the board already. And did I mention injuries? I'm going to mention, if I haven't, I'm going to mention it again because, you never know. Well, as I said, they went through that. Kent Hughes did last year. With Joel Edmondson. So I think that the market's set up perfectly for Kent Hughes to strike right now.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Jacob Markstrom for a second here? Because this is a pretty strange situation coming out of Calgary. Of course, he's been on the trade boards pretty much since they started happening this season. But Calgary saying that they might not want to trade Markstrom any longer. And Markstrom, of course, has expressed some unhappiness about all the rumors going around. And further to that, it seems like the New Jersey Devils are expressing a ton of interest in acquiring one Jacob Markstrom. Markstrom does have a caveat in that he has a no movement clause. So what do you think about Jacob Markstrom right now?
I don't know, because this is a mess. It's a mess. There was a report this week from the fourth period, Dave Pagnotta, that the Flames advised the Devils that they're going to keep Jacob Markstrom for the rest of the season and maybe be open to trading him in the summer. There was another report, I think this one came from LeBrun, was that the Calgary Flames had dropped the need for the Devils to take on some of the salary, the for the Calgary Flames to hold on to some of the salary in the negotiation with the Devils. And in all of that mess, then Markstrom comes out and says, it's been really difficult. I like all the players here. They've been really good and really supportive and really respectful. Everyone in the room has been good to me, but management hasn't. Things should have been handled differently from the top. So if you can decipher all of that, I really don't know what's happening. But what we could say is that there are teams out there that need a goaltender, and that means that Kent Hughes should take advantage of the situation, all of this muddiness that's going on in Calgary.
Yeah, I think so. So that brings us to our Canadiens trade chips, and the one on all the trade boards once again, Jake Allen. And according to Frank Saravalli, he believes that the most likely goaltender to move at the deadline is one Jake Allen. We've had the 3 goalie tandem all season. I think you and I have been really wanting that to come to an end. It doesn't seem like any of the goalies are very happy about it. And of course, I think it's just time that Jake Allen gets moved out. He, for whatever reason, in the Montreal media and with the fans, he's become kind of, I almost want to say, the enemy on this team, which is kind of unfortunate because I do think that Jake Allen is a lot better than what he's been made out to be. But let's talk about Jake Allen for a second here.
It's really awful, Jake Allen is a very good man. He's got a good heart. He's a tremendous team guy. He always has been. And he's a very good goaltender. He's not a number 1 goaltender anymore, but neither are, don't delude yourself, neither are any of the Canadiens' 3 goaltenders true starting goaltenders right now. The best one is 45th in the National Hockey League in terms of goals saved above expected. That's not going to cut it on a contending team. But yeah, and you said that there's, Dave Pegnot also said same thing. He expects if a goaltender is traded that it's going to be Jake Allen. Why is that? Marc-Andre Fleury says he'd like to stay in Minnesota. The Predators have said that Saros isn't available. There's a huge mess in Calgary with Markstrom. So then there's Jake Allen. And if you look at, take this season out of it, and he's a goaltender with a .911 save percentage. I think that the whole 3 goalie rotation, and it's not just about starts, but it's about the work that they get in practice. We've talked to goaltenders that have been in a 3 goalie rotation, and they say that it's really tough not to have my net in practice, where you get used to that, and that's something that has been, Jake Allen's whole routine has been thrown off this season. So that certainly affects his performance. The other. Another thing that's affected his performance is the Canadiens don't score goals when he's in net. That's not his problem. The other thing that's affected his game is the absolute viciousness by the media, and it's disgusting. It is, and the fans who follow along and jump on every goal allowed by Jake Allen. It's embarrassing as a fan base. But the fact that the Montreal media, the legacy media, have just vilified Jake Allen in order to promote their guy is one of the worst characteristics of the media in Montreal. And, that's certainly affected him as well. So, could he move? Well, Carolina's, I think, although Coach Kev just won Rookie of the Month, and has been playing very well. But do you want somebody backing up a young goalie like that? Edmonton Skinner? Do you want somebody there? Colorado? I think they're, and we've talked before about the Devils, and maybe they want a consolation prize if Markstrom doesn't work out. There are opportunities, and I tend to think that this is something that's going to happen in the summer. But if Jake Allen can be moved, and maybe without, it would be difficult without salary retention. It's certainly a possibility. It would be good for the Canadiens organization. It would be good for Jake Allen, and it would be good for Montembeault and Primo.
Yeah, I think the one last thing I will say about Jake Allen, and I think you and I have been monitoring this most of the season. You look at the starts that Allen gets compared to Montembeault, and it seems like Allen always starts in the more difficult situations. Even this past week on the road against the New Jersey Devils, who have been pretty good over the past little while, especially at home. And then Montembeault gets the at-home start in Montreal against the skidding Arizona Coyotes. So even the Montreal Canadiens have not really put Jake Allen in a position where he can be successful and really show off what he can do. So I think this whole thing has just been mismanaged, like in the worst possible way, to be completely honest.
I agree.
Looking at what other things Montreal might have on the board here, of course, we talked about David Savard and Jake Allen, Tanner Pearson and Yoel Armia, that I think that actually had a pretty decent week. Those are a couple of veterans that could help some teams looking to make a push in the playoffs. Of course, Armia being a bigger forward, one of those guys that can get dirty in the corners and win some puck battles. Pearson, just a ton of experience, and especially with some Stanley Cups, very likable teammate as well. I wouldn't be shocked to see if he was moved. I think Pearson as well on an expiring deal makes a lot of sense as a rental for some other teams looking for depth. And of course, we've talked about this third-party broker situation. We've seen that come up twice. Montreal, only one retention spot left. They can only retain once more this season. I guess that will be a possibility as well, if nothing else.
Yeah. The retention slot yielded, what did we say, a 5th round pick last time around, being involved in the Bodino trade. Is that the best way to use that retention slot? Could you get better than a 5th round pick if you retain salary on Jake Allen and or Savard? I expect so. Yoel Armia, he's after a difficult start, he's had a pretty good season. I think could Vancouver use a player like him? I think so. Tanner Pearson, you mentioned Stanley Cup in 2014. He won a Stanley Cup with the Los Angeles Kings. Los Angeles Kings are having trouble with their depth. Is there an opportunity for him to go back? And we heard Kent Hughes say he'd like to get something for players on an expiring contract. The only one that applies to is Tanner Pearson. I think those two players, it's less likely that they'll be involved. But if there's an opportunity, and part of that is just because the Canadiens don't have, as we've explained over and over again, just one salary retention slot. Those are all have been used up already by the Jeff Petrie trade and the Joel Edmondson trade this season. So just one opportunity for them to retain salary when they make a trade. That's going to tie the hands somewhat of Kent Hughes.
Yeah, and I think that it's fair to say, yes, those are the players that we've determined to be trade chips. But I think most players on the Montreal Canadiens, if a team is calling, you certainly listen. Doesn't mean that you're outright shopping them, but you're at least taking that phone call. Which brings me to the Untouchables. And Rick, I think you and I both, we didn't tell each other who we had marked down as Untouchables, but we both said that there were 3. I'll say mine here. I'll talk about it for a minute, and then I'll pass it off to you to see if we ended up with similar answers. But for me, I've determined 3 Untouchables. Nick Suzuki, I think that's the most obvious one. He's by far the best player on this team right now and the captain. Cole Caulfield, you just committed to him long term. Not his greatest season, but I think that there's still a very important player in Cole Caulfield. And the only other one is one Caden Gooley, who I think is a pretty good marquee defenseman that the Montreal Canadiens can build their core around. And Rick, who do you have determined as your untouchables on this team?
Well, as they say, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. We agree on 2 of those 3 players. And why are we doing this? Well, we talked about it last week that Jordan Harris came up in trade talks, whether it was a team that was inquiring about him or whether it was Kent Hughes trying to make space on the left side and shopping him. It wasn't particularly clear, but we just for fun we decided to include this untouchable list. And yes, it goes back to, if Wayne Gretzky can be traded, anybody can be traded. But when you're rebuilding a team, you want to keep the core pieces. And 2 of the core pieces for me are Nick Suzuki and Caden Gooley. One up front, one on the back end. They are important players on the ice. They are important players off the ice. Both are going to be exceptional performers and exceptional leaders for this team going forward. They are core pieces, and when you're in a rebuild, you can't move players like that. As the third, you added Caulfield. I couldn't get there just because the start of the season he was being compared to Ovechkin and maybe DeBrincat. And is he that player now? We still don't know. So I took Kirby Dach, and I took the Kirby Dach that we hope Kirby's going to be. Not the Kirby Dach who may be injury prone. But the Kirby Dach who, when he's been in the lineup, is a player who can drive the play and make his line mates better. I don't think we know. I think we know that when he's on the ice, he can be that kind of player. I don't know that we know he can do that for 82 games, given his injury history. So I'd want to keep him and make sure that he's not given away before that fact is determined.
Yeah, I think those are great picks too. You know what? Like you said, 2 out of 3, not too bad. And, actually, at this point, this ties in very nicely with our Canadiens Connection question of the week. And we'd like to ask all of our listeners, who is untouchable on the Habs? We want to hear from you. You just heard our thoughts on it. And with that, I think, Rick, it's a good time to get to our final break, right?
Absolutely.
So let's get to that break here. We'll take a brief break so that you can hear from our sponsors, and then make sure that you stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
The Canadiens Connection is proud to be a partner of Rocket Sports Media, digital media publishers of sports and entertainment websites. Their mission is to build a worldwide network of sports fans who are informed, engaged, entertained, and connected. Learn more about RSM, its team, and its portfolio of brands at rocketsportsmedia.com. I bet you enjoy sporting your best Habs jerseys, dressing up your kids and pets in the cutest Habs gear, and showing off your decked-out hockey cave or fanning. Well, don't just show your friends, show your Habs. The Rocket Sports Media team wants you to boast your finest pictures for our global network of Montreal Canadiens fans. Include the hashtag #ShowYourHabs when posting your fan photos on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Then log on to showyourhabs.com to see your entries, along with photos and posts from Habs fans all over the world. A proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network. If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. In addition, we also offer sponsorship opportunities for fan events and featured areas of website content, giving you name and logo recognition. Visit rocketsportsmedia.com to contact us regarding this unique marketing opportunity. For the most trusted source of news, analysis, and features about the Montreal Canadiens, log in to thn.com/Montreal, your year-round source for anything Habs related. That's thn.com/Montreal.
Welcome back to episode 285 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. You can follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can check out the website canadiensconnection.fm. Also, feel free to text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line, 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. And I think we're coming up on what's going to be a very interesting and very busy trade deadline. We did our best to lay out all the primer for you in that last segment, and certainly would be interested to hear what all of our listeners thought about it.
For sure.
So if you want to keep up to date with everything Montreal Canadiens, Rocket Sports has you covered. Here's what you need to know. We cover the Montreal Canadiens for the hockey news. You can find all of that content at thn.com/Montreal. Game day coverage, feature articles, Laval Rocket, and prospects. All the Canadiens coverage in one place. That's thn.com/Montreal. And if you're looking for some more multimedia type content, head over to our YouTube channel. Just search at All Habs and make sure that you hit that subscribe button as we put out a couple different shows throughout the week. The first one, the Habs Hockey Report, hosted by one Amy Johnson. The latest episode is entitled, This Might Make Montreal Canadiens Trades a Little Tougher. And Rick, I believe you have an announcement about next week's episode.
I do, and it's I think it's a big deal. I should say, first of all, our YouTube channel is becoming a real hub and a real key part of our coverage. And Amy does a great job, and we'll tell you about some other options on that YouTube channel in a second. YouTube.com/allhabs, or just search for at allhabs. And you'll get to our channel. And the Habs Hockey Report is very popular. This week, it'll come out a little bit earlier, probably late Tuesday afternoon. And that's because Amy's going to be joined by Jason Bukala from Sportsnet. And if you don't know, Jason, former scout with the Florida Panthers. He does some great articles on Sportsnet called Scouts Analysis. And he's going to join Amy and lay out what he thinks Kent Hughes might do, and kind of the plans for the Montreal Canadiens from a scout's perspective. And I think that's going to be fascinating for you to watch and to listen to. And you're going to want to find that on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/allhabs.
Yeah, so looking forward to that, and hit that notification bell as well if you want to know about it as soon as it comes up. That way you don't miss it. Another show that Amy Johnson hosts on our YouTube channel is the Rocket Hockey Report. Last week's episode is entitled Another One. The Laval Rocket now have two players missing this week. So if you want to stay up to date with the Laval Rocket and the Montreal Canadiens, look out for those two shows. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button if you like what you saw, and leave a comment. Get engaged in that conversation, as Amy loves to read through all of those. She might even reply too. This podcast, The Canadiens Connection, is also being put on our YouTube channel as well. So if you prefer to watch it on YouTube, head on over there. Last week's episode is entitled What Might the Montreal Canadiens Do at the Trade Deadline. You don't want to miss out on that one. So hit like and subscribe and leave a comment as well. We love reading through all of those comments, and we're actually going to get to some a little bit later in this segment. Plus, we've started doing live stream watch-alongs on YouTube for Montreal Canadiens games this season. The next one is going to be Montreal at Carolina on Thursday, March the 7th. I'm going to be joined by my colleague Nathan. And with that said, I'm going to invite Nathan to the studio to help show everyone what we do on our live streams. Nathan, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great today. Thank you for asking, Michael. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. So in addition to all the other Rocket Sports content that our whole team has been producing, you and I have been doing something brand new this season. We've been live streaming on YouTube.
Yes. Brand new this season. We've started doing live stream watch-alongs for the Montreal Canadiens games.
So we've been streaming on our own YouTube channel, and we do this a couple times per month.
Yes, so look out for upcoming live stream watch-alongs throughout the season.
So for those who have yet to join us, how does this whole thing work?
So first, you want to tune into the game on one screen, press mute, and join our live stream on YouTube. We will have live play-by-play, scores, updates, analysis, and commentary, all while interacting with viewers via the live chat. It's the perfect way to add an extra layer of entertainment to your hockey game night. And for those who have joined us before, we have a new segment at the end of each game.
Yes, make sure you stick around after the game for our post-game show, the last round. This will take some time to summarize the game, highlight some of the key takeaways. Plus, this is another opportunity for our viewers to send in their thoughts about the game in our live chat. Plus, during the game, we have a great intermission show designed to engage all of our viewers. And what's that all about, Nathan?
Well, that is where we'll have an intermission show entitled Nathan's Notes, where we break down the game and have great topical discussions to keep everyone up to date.
So make sure you head over to our YouTube channel, just youtube.com/allhabs, and hit that subscribe button. Plus, you can tap that notification bell so you don't miss a single one of our upcoming live streams.
We look forward to watching the game with you. Make sure you subscribe and tap the notification bell so you don't miss out.
We'll see you there.
Definitely. You'll see me there. I can tell you that because these live streams have become a lot of fun. Thanks, Nathan, for joining us in the studio. Thanks, Michael, as well. These are tremendous. And Nathan did a good job explaining just how it works. You mute the broadcast. You don't need to listen to Gary Galley anyway. So let's say you're sitting on your couch, you're watching the TV, mute the TV, you've got a phone in your hand, then go to youtube.com/allhabs, and stick, the live broadcast on. Make sure, you guys made the point, I'll make it again. Make sure you're subscribed so you get notification of the live stream. And there it is. You can listen to some great commentary, some great information, as well as be able to connect with Canadiens fans from all over the world. It is it's like being in a bar and surrounded by a bunch of Canadiens fans and all excited about the game and interacting. If you can't do that, then this is the next best thing. The Rocket Sports live streams with very capable hosts in Nathan and yourself, Michael.
Yeah, so looking forward to it. Thursday, March 7th, and that's trade deadline eve. I believe I said it last week, but on the last live stream against the Pittsburgh Penguins, we had a live trade to react to. Who knows what's going to happen this time, and we'll certainly talk about the trade deadline during that live stream and get everyone prepared for the next day. So make sure that you come along and watch the game with us.
We have a trade to announce, the most famous words from Gary Bettman.
Oh, yeah. Also, I just wanted to let everyone know that you should make sure that you're subscribed to the premier Rocket Sports podcast on your favorite podcasting app, The Canadiens Connection. You can find every single episode at canadiensconnection.fm. We'll be here every single Saturday throughout the year and provide great Montreal Canadiens content. If you enjoy the show, we'd really appreciate if you left us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. We are your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens.
We definitely are your inside link, and I got a really fascinating text from one of our loyal listeners this week who said that they've noticed that when when content appears and we seem to have the inside track and we talk to our contacts around the National Hockey League, that when we talk about a story, funny thing happens that a lot of these fan podcasts then kind of pick up on that, and then that's their topic the following week. So our listener said, why be second? Why not listen to the Canadiens Connection and get your information directly? I agree 100%.
Yeah, I love that and I appreciate hearing from that listener. And just before we get to our Canadiens Connection question of the week, we do have a little announcement from our Rocket Sports team. We are recruiting, and Rick, what's the best way for people that might be interested to reach out to us?
Reach out to us either via text 5853-ROCKET or by email, hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. If you are interested in joining this talented team, but a fun team, we have a lot of fun, and there are lots of passionate hockey fans here who are excited to bring you, using their talents, bring you the real story, the inside story from the Montreal Canadiens. And I'm grateful for the work of each and every one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a ton of fun. Definitely recommend it. And whatever your talent is or whatever it is that you're interested in learning about, I'm sure that we can find a spot for you. And we look forward to hearing from you all. And Rick, I'm sure that you're going to look forward to having some great conversations.
For sure. hello@rocketsportsmedia.com, 5853-ROCKET. I had one of those at a telephone conversation with... well, I'll tell you more about it next week, perhaps, but a really fascinating individual who may be joining the team.
Absolutely. So now it's a good time to turn it over to our listeners and get to our Canadiens Connection question of the week. And this week we ask, who is untouchable on the Habs? You got to hear our opinions in that second segment. We want to hear from you. I'll say that Rocket Sports text line once again because it's a great way to reach out to us, 5853-ROCKET. And you can reach out to us by email, like Rick just said as well. Also on social media, however you want to get a hold of us. We look forward to hearing from you. And we get tons of tweets, emails, texts, and comments throughout the week. A few of them that we like to read on air today for you. We edited them lately just for clarity. And Rick, this first one comes from @DarkMatterEclipse. What did they have to say?
This is a comment on our last episode. That's last week's Canadiens Connection episode 284. And remember, if you missed any of our episodes, you can go to CanadiensConnection.fm or on the podcast player that you're listening to us right now. Dark Matter Eclipse on YouTube says, Jordan Harris is a smart defender. Among Canadiens, D has better in-depth stats along with Xhekaj. He's the smaller left D and can play the right side, but out of the current four young left shot D-man, he's simply the odd man out by default due to his stature and lesser physicality. What you said about Savard, and that's last week on 284, is pretty much what I said on a Habs fan page a few days ago. The young D will miss his coaching, but the next trade deadline, he could be injured or his play will have declined. Trade him now to a contender while available right shot Ds aren't in abundance. And we said some of those same things in our second segment. So thank you very much to Dark Matter Eclipse.
We had another comment coming in from Peter Pinsonneau, -YL3IB. I believe that's off of YouTube as well. And what Peter has to say is, I agree about Matheson. Trade him while he is at peak value. And of course, this is something we've also been talking about quite a bit. So we appreciate that comment as well. Rick, you had another comment that we wanted to read too.
This one on YouTube from L Rochter 1374. Trade Matheson, Machar, and Reinbacher for the second overall pick in the 2024 draft.
That's interesting. Wonder who's projected to go out at that number 2 in this draft.
Yep. Well, we're going to have that in our coming weeks as our focus, once the trade deadline is passed, turns to the 2024 NHL draft.
And the final comment we have comes from @she_26. And what they have to say is, well, Mr. Kent Hughes and Mr. Marty St. Louis both need to go. Glad to see Xhekaj doing better after everything they've put him through. They should trade Matheson, but I hope beyond hope that they don't trade Savard. So another very interesting opinion there. I appreciate hearing from you at she20_26. I think that's certainly an opinion that some other Habs fans might share as well.
Absolutely. Fan of Savard and Xhekaj. Not a fan of Matheson, Hughes, and St. Louis.
So that's all the comments and tweets that we had to read this week, but make sure to keep those coming in, and we'll see if we can read them out on an upcoming episode. We appreciate hearing from all of our great listeners, and we appreciate and respect the opinions of everyone else too.
For sure.
Coming up this week, the Montreal Canadiens have 4 games. March the 2nd, Montreal is going to face off against the Tampa Bay Lightning. On the 5th, Montreal is going to visit the Nashville Predators. And then on the 7th, they go to visit the Carolina Hurricanes. And as I've said a few times, we'll be live streaming that on YouTube. Nathan and I will bring you all that you need for that game, and look forward to having fun with all of our viewers. That's going to be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for listening. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Also share it on social media if you like what you heard. Enjoy the week, and we'll be back here next Saturday, March 9th, after the trade deadline
show. Yeah.
Yep. So that's going to be another great episode. Perfect timing. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.